What's up, everybody? Casey Santana with Rich Soil Podcast. Today we have a double whammy. Patty from Noble Gardens and Chiah from Arcanna Flowers. Both of them are from Moms Do Weed. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys for coming on today and joining us. We're excited to have you guys. I'm enjoying the sunny weather out here in SoCal. I know you guys are in NorCal. Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? What's the weather looking like for you guys up there?
It's raining. We call it May because it may rain and it may not. It might also snow.
Oh, don't tell me that. I was like, we have the awards coming this weekend, Emerald Cup Awards this weekend, and I'm flying for the first time. And it's only an hour and 25 minutes, but still, I'm like, I don't want to see clouds that day. It's going to give me anxiety. Wow, rainy. I did not
Yeah.
expect it.
Well, we're Chia and I are still about another 2.5, maybe 3 hours drive north of where you will be in Richmond.
You
So
guys,
we're north.
wait,
Yeah. So we're a
you
little
guys,
further up.
are you guys
So
close
our
to
weather system,
like
we're
where the harvest
closer.
ball was? That was,
Yeah, better.
Yeah. That's like a stone's throw closer and then a little further north. Yeah.
yeah, I've been to
So,
Ukiah Ranch and I was
yeah.
like, wow, this was like, I felt like I was in Oregon almost. So, yeah, I imagine you
Yeah.
guys are up there enjoying the breezy weather. So, let's get started into this. I know it's not morning, but for my podcast, I like to really highlight that the plant medicine has been much of a segue and part of my fitness journey and my wellness journey, not just as a person that has mixed martial arts in their background, but becoming a mom, having two babies back to back. I didn't know, like postpartum depression was real, how that affects women's bodies. So I like to ask all of our guests, especially if they're in the cannabis industry, do you have a morning routine? And any of you guys can go first. And does that include any sort of fitness or meditation?
Ooh. Well, I'd be happy to go first. I don't really, so I'm like the worst. I'm a Virgo, and you'd think I'd have more routine, but I really don't. I try super hard to do the same things every day and it doesn't really work out that way. But I've been doing a lot of physical therapy stuff and stretches and exercises and strengthening work. So try to do that for at least a half an hour every day, whether it's the morning or the evening. That depends. But I definitely get baked and do my stretches and do some yogas. And working in the farm is like enough exercise.
All day, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, some days in high time of like the harvest, I get like 12 miles of exercise because I'm walking back and forth. My phone will tell me that I've just walked like 12 miles today. So the garden is like, a little ways from the house. So you're like doop, 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 all day.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. I just read a
Yeah, a little
study
bit uphill.
that like if you do your workouts outside and not in like a city setting to where it's like a lot of traffic and you're just in like a garden setting, that by 80% statistically you are like more creative spiritually, and you're like more earthy. So I imagine you guys being on your farm and having that much, if you're saying you're getting that many miles in a day, you have a lot of land. And so it's like a blessing and a curse, I guess, at the same time for you, depending on the time of the month. As women, because activity can weigh on us. But I love that. I love that you have the capability of just like getting out there. Even if you don't have, like for me, if I don't have energy to actually do like physical work, a walk seems so refreshing. And especially if you have the time to get away from like everybody and it's just like the birds, just listening to whatever's out in the open is, it can go a long way, at least for me. How about you, Patty? How's your morning looking like?
My mornings are a little chaotic because I sometimes am like, my thinking is like, oh God, I gotta go do this. I gotta go do that. I'm taking care of, baby plants right now. So sometimes you wake up and you like go over and you look at them and you're like, oh, okay, everybody needs to be watered. all right, there goes my, that cannot wait. And so, like it can kind of throw me for a little bit of a loop. But when things are more in their groove and I have like, the garden is fully established and I'm not watching babies and I'm not watching seed starts, then I like to wake up in the morning and get back down onto the ground and use my foam roller and work out some of those kinks and kind of work on my external rotators, work on my spinal erectors, and up through my mid thoracic spine is usually a bad area for me. I do a lot of my work is out in front of me, so my traps get really tight and I have a lot of like challenges with my posture. So I do a lot of opening. Yep, that one there, Chiah. I do a lot of like opening exercises, and mostly my floor work is focused around like functional fitness and stretching because I get a lot of my anaerobic movement and muscle building movement is out in the field, lifting heavy things, carrying buckets, walking. And then I have my trusty spin bike over here that I'm trying to reacquaint myself with. But it's been a bumpy start. It's a love-hate relationship right now with me and the spinner.
Yeah, no, I
used to teach spin classes. I mean, we were talking about a girl who taught 6 hours of spin every day.
That's intense.
Trying to get back at it.
Yeah, I taught 8 hours a week. So I taught the 6 a.m. class. Yeah. A day would be like intense, but I did one time. Johnny G did an event at our gym. It was a cycle-a-thon to raise money for the American Heart Association. Yes, no, yeah, no. It is. It's very telling. Yeah, it's very telling when somebody says they taught spin. But I taught for 8 years. I was the 6 a.m. teacher at one gym and the 6 p.m. teacher at another gym. And then I taught group exercise, like group weight training. And then I taught.
Those are my
so I taught a lot of group exercise. And then I was personal trainer. And I spearheaded a women's weightlifting 101, where I actively pulled women out of the women's weight training area and got them out onto the main floor and taught them terms like, "Hi, sir, I would like to work in with you. Can I work in with you on the leg press?" Yeah, because it's like they didn't know what just the jargon is to just interrupt somebody's sets, and they're like, "He's been on here for like 15 minutes, and I can't, wait 15 minutes." It's like, yeah, but he doesn't get to dominate the machine, sister. You can walk up and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna work in between your rests." Yeah, and they and guys were like, "Heck yeah, sister, I'll help you load and unload my plates," or and then they get even more excited when they don't have to unload somebody's 45s, and they're like, "Oh no, you can leave 2 of those on there for me." Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I saw that in one of your descriptions, and I was like, heart. I put notes on everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I come from a fitness background, and there's etiquette in the gym, and weightlifting is, there's all types of different wellness and practices in fitness. And like you said, there's functional, there's training, there's yoga, there's slow, there's, people who are into like CrossFit type of training. But women alone, for myself, it took me a while to get out to the main floor and just feel confident to be in that main mirror where all the weights are and everybody's, pumping, the testosterone is flowing. Yeah. And, as time went on, I felt like I absorbed some of that testosterone, and I'm like, yeah, what's up, dude? And I'm like, so comfortable, but you meet some really incredible guys in there as well that are equally as like passionate and excited to see women, and aren't there to be like a creep. Now there's creeps, of course. But there's some great guys out there that are like, yeah, I'll totally like set it up for you when you're done. Let me know. And it's like we're all in a rotation. And I love that, like that family gym. It's like the gym rat type of talk. But yeah, fitness has been a great thing for me. And I think I'm seeing it in more of the people in the industry, and more moms coming out about it and being more comfortable in their skin about it. I know all of us go to Target. I don't know if there's Target up there. Is there a Target up? Is there Targets up there?
Not so close.
Walmart's, like
I wish.
something where you're seeing like wine shirts and it's like all this, I cry about that. I get so upset. I'm like, oh, there's those shirts again. And,
Yeah, drinking is super
Oh
normalized,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be
It's
pregnant and
like
it's
the
like, buy
antithesis
your
of it.
one glass and it's totally okay. And it's like, it's almost pushed. It's pushed very much. And for me, it's, a lot of people, me personally, I don't hide my cannabis from my kids. It's right next to my coffee maker. Obviously, it's in a mason jar. They can't open it. They're 2 and 4. I don't hide it. I don't hide consuming it either. I'm not blowing it in their face, but I don't hide consuming it. And some people feel like they still have to hide it in their bathroom or whatever the case is. For me, I feel I'm a double standarding. If I will allow wine on my, if I have family gatherings and everybody's drinking tequila, and I come from Hispanic Filipino, so it's tequila and beer and wine and everybody's drinking, but they all know that I smoke. And so if I'm going to go take my little device and go somewhere, that's my thing, and come back and not worry about like, oh, you smell. That's no difference to me. So I've been a huge black sheep in my family for that reason, because the cigarette smokers, drinkers, but dare I smoke a fucking joint dead middle of that fucking backyard? It's like, what? No, that's not allowed. Granted, my dad on the Filipino side has been really lax about it. He's gotten in trouble in the Philippines at his younger time. And so he has dibble-dabbed, has come to me for some of his girlfriends to get, a sack or two. But my mom from El Salvador is like, till today is like, no, like absolutely not. No.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, because one, culturally, I know for a fact that maybe if there was literature in Spanish that broke down education on the plant, like help people, encourage them to educate themselves. We're not saying try it, but at least educate themselves.
Yeah, breaking down the stigma through education is where it's at. I mean, that's like we have to,
Absolutely.
yeah, we have to educate people. Otherwise, it's just all these rumors and shit around what, you know, what's up with the cannabis. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, let's start with some actual facts.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's
Yeah.
helped me tremendously. Obviously, recreationally is when I started using it. It was all like fun kickbacks type of deal, and my cousin brought it out, and I was like, this is gross. And the next thing I know, I'm like, every day I'm like, this is great. And my parents divorced at a young age, lived in 2 different type of households. But I never I realized as I got older, wow, I never put myself in a victim mentality. And I was like, maybe it's because I was always smoking weed. And I did a lot of reflection, and I'm like, it is because I've been smoking weed. It's just kept me moving on, pivoting, shit happens. Okay, shit happens. Keep pushing. I have a goal.
Yeah.
And then I've been I think it's also made me the type of person or woman to question people. I don't just, oh, that's what that person said, I'm going to go by it. I tend to do my own research. And I think that's led me to where I am now, because if you can't really be confident about the plant and talk about it and know who you are, then I think you will have trouble trying to explain to somebody who's just like, that mountain's purple. And you're like, bro, it's not purple. It's not. And that's my mom. And so it's she's my biggest challenge. And so I always tell people we have so much work to do. I know they're like, oh, you live in California. It's where you're there. And I'm like, it's not.
No, not at all. Well, partially, 65% of the municipalities in California don't allow for cannabis dispensaries and or deliveries. So we're already out the gate. A lot of people don't even have access to it. So, in the areas that it's really prevalent, that's one thing. And we can do a lot with, with those places. But otherwise, we're kind of disserving our people anyways.
Yeah. Well, I'm going on a tangent again.
Me too.
We're going to dive into that a little bit more. I'm glad you jumped into that, because I know you guys, I've seen your guys' post. I see you guys are very active. You guys are using your voice out there as women, as people who have been embedded in the roots of cannabis traditions. Chiah, you have shared with us a little bit about who you would consider your mentor. I asked all my guests who you guys would consider as a mentor, as an individual person. I have a lot of mentors from afar. And so I'm curious to know what people's answers are. And you listed your teacher from herb school.
Well, yeah. So I attended herb school actually 2 times, and I actually taught there as well as a local herbalism school here in Mendocino County. And she's an old school hippie woman who has this amazing little garden and farm. And you would go for like, I think 11 months out of the year, you go with a group of women. There was about 20 of us. We'd go and you'd stay for the whole weekend. And that was herb school for the month. So you did like 1 week in a month. So you really got to like dive in and get to know each other. And so my herb school teacher is Donna D'Terra. She's like, just been doing herbalism in the woods, doing her witchy thing forever. And so I just learned a lot from her about just like embracing nature and becoming like, becoming one with nature and just like using your intuition with plants and how to heal yourself and others and working with them and planting and gardening and all that. So she really like sort of launched me into embracing the garden as something that's like needs to be more wholesome. Like there are a lot of things. You can have the veggies, the herbs, the flowers, all of it there, and they're cohesive and they work together. So I learned a lot from her.
Okay, I was going to ask. So I imagine this is not just cannabis herbalists, right? So you're learning.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the plants we talked about a lot, but
I love that because during COVID, I went down a rabbit hole of trying to grow my own herbs from like romero to like chandula and all these different type of herbs. And I just had like just so much fun watching them do their thing. And some of them survived. I think parsley was probably the easiest for me to have, but I even tried like propagating like using the edges of garlic and onions to see like what I would get, because I know you like cut the ends of it, and you can do that. You guys, you grow, I think I see you grow other things besides cannabis on your farm and your land.
Yeah. Well, we started out on our land guerrilla growing the cannabis. So when we first bought this land 22 years ago, my husband grew cannabis in the shade and the madrone berry bushes down the hill. So we had to hide it because it was still like, so we had our veggie garden and our fruit orchard and all that like out in this other spot. And then once legalization came around, we brought the cannabis plants out into the sunshine and like started interplanting everything. So there's like, I have like feverfew and a fig tree and there's cannabis in between, it's just like, there's pretty much any plant that wants to like live here and acclimate. I just let them do their thing. And some stuff has really just taken over, but that's cool. It's like naturalizing.
Yeah. Chiah's calendula is like a sight to see.
It's like a field right now.
Like a field. It's the most beautiful place.
I think I saw a recent post and I was like, oh, my kids would love that. Like he's just free range, please. If you guys plant either one of you guys probably know this answer, but I'm just curious, if you guys plant cannabis plant near or in between a bed of like a fruit plant of some sort and like your fig tree, does it absorb those terps by any chance, or what happens in that?
I wouldn't say necessarily that that's a thing. It's more like
what benefit?
The interplay between the plants is more around the pests and the pheromones that those plants are putting off that either are like attracting good bugs or repelling them, and or some plants like in the soil, and I think maybe scent wise too, just don't really like each other. Like certain things don't like to be planted next to other things.
Yeah.
But some stuff really just like thrives with the cannabis, and especially all the flowers. Like I'm just all about more flowers because then there's more bees and good bugs to eat the shitty ones, We don't want the aphids or the, the thrips and all that kind of stuff. And being in a field, like we literally live on 5,600 acres and our farm is like, this little tiny place, and it's like surrounded by grass, so you're kind of at the mercy of nature, right? So you want to have things around your cannabis that repel and or attract the good bugs.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep.
With that said, I asked if or how long cannabis has been part of your life, and entire life, born into it was Chia's answer. That is that's probably crazy upbringing. I don't, do you want to dive into that? What did it look like being a child? Both of your parents, it looks like you are second generation cultivar. And, I'm going to let you tell us your brand story. But, when you do explain that you guys breed and are cultivars, I just ask that you kind of dive into that just so that our people understand what breeding is for our industry. And then same for cultivars, because I just started learning the difference between understanding each of the terms. And so, yeah, I'm excited to totally geek out on this. But yes, tell me more how long you've been playing with dirt and how long the smell's been around.
Cool. Well, so I grew up in a hippie commune that started in the 70s. And so my parents moved out here to like get away from the political times of Vietnam era and stuff. And so we just, I was like conceived in a tent and my parents were building a house as, when I was born and stuff. So like, pretty rustic. Like we didn't have a toilet until I was like 12. I think we had an outhouse. We had like, just no power. We didn't even have a light or any kind of powered thing in our house until I was maybe like 7. So we lived by like candlelight and kerosene lantern as I was growing up. Like that's how we rolled. So
here in California?
Yep. Yeah. Super rural in Mendocino County. It's like actually on the same ranch that I live on now.
Okay.
We bought land just a little bit down the road from where I was born. And so everybody, like back in those days, people like didn't really have jobs, right? They could live off of pretty much nothing. They could move out here and kind of, like do their thing and grow a few plants. And people didn't move here to grow cannabis like back then. They just moved here and cannabis was like a byproduct of the lifestyle. It was kind of like, oh, we smoke it, so let's grow a few. And then they realized like, shit, I can get like $3,500 for $4,500 a pound. Like you don't have to grow a lot and you can live pretty chill life. So that's how it kind of all started here. But growing up on the land, like, my dad just grew in the blackberry brambles. Like we had a couple of acres of blackberry forest, and in that time was the Reagan era, and we were being flown by helicopters and stuff all the time. So, you had to really hide it. And it's pretty obvious because it's like bright green, right? So people grew up in like, they put platforms up in trees and put plants up in the canopy to like hide them and in the blackberry bushes. And so I grew up hauling buckets of bat guano through the blackberry bushes, and that's how we did it. And so when like legalization was coming, we were like, my husband and I were like, okay, we're going to do the thing so we can just stop being afraid, So I grew up with that mentality, is like, you never tell anyone what you do. Like you never tell, when I was a kid at school, like my dad would guilt me, like, if you fucking tell anybody, like I'm going to jail, it's going to be your fault, like, so we had to be super hush hush about it. But I grew up in, sort of the culture of like, there was a giant tarp on the floor in the harvest season, and everybody sat in a circle around it, and they like de-leafed onto the tarp, and you like hung it up on a line, and you slept in a bed underneath it. And that's how it went for, most of my life. So I kind of like just literally was born into it.
So cool.
Yeah.
My kids see it in our closet when I hang mine, and I use my Bath and Body Works ties to hang them. So it's like, this is the new age suburban mom style growing. My husband's like, coat. It's like the coat. It was like the coat closet, but it was like the darkest closet. That was cool. So I was like, this works. And my husband's like, yeah, I'm
Oh
fucking.
my God.
I was like, oh, I'm hanging in the closet.
I know people that use it. That's a thing. It's totally a thing.
Yeah, coat hangers.
Totally mom's thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we get it done, and it looks good at the same time. It's aesthetically pleasing.
There you go.
Oh, that's really great.
It's my bougie drying room.
Yeah, and I recycle everything. So I'm recycling my rope and I'm recycling my hanger. So no need to buy extra string.
Yeah.
Um, so right now you just ended your 24th season. You and your husband have gone since have been doing this, obviously been part over 5 decades. And River, is it Txai? How do you say that?
No, it said River Txai. It's my older son's name. It's an Amazonian native word, and it means like the same thing as namaste, like I'm a part of you, you're a part of me. And so River Txai.
River Txai. Oh, I love that. Okay. Do you want to dive into that and tell us how that started and what exactly do you guys do right now?
So my husband's father was also like not very pro at cultivating, but he was a cultivator back in the day, and he actually got busted in 1982. And so he kind of instilled like a different level of fear into my husband. But when my husband and I got together, we just, like I said, we're just growing in the brambles. Like we had trails all over the place. So it would be like a plant over there, a plant over there, because you don't want it to look like a patch, right?
Right.
And so over the years, like as we brought that into, more of the family lifestyle and into the garden and like showing the kids the plants and all that, like things have changed a lot in 25 years. We first started growing on my father's plot because we lived at that place. And then we came over here and been doing it like a little bit differently recently, because it's more these days you have to grow more of like the same stuff. It's not like seed starts are really hard to do because you get just like, maybe you get 2 pounds off this plant and maybe you get 20, but like that's all you get of that exact same thing. So unless you're doing cloning, like it's all over the map. So nowadays our style is so much different than we'd really honestly prefer, but we do our best with it. And also we live on the side of a hill, so we're super terraced, and like you can't get on a big old like orchard ladder. If you're growing these huge plants, it's actually a hazard. So nowadays we just like to plant a little bit late in the season. We do mixed light and full season. So we plant a little bit later in the season. Plants don't get gigantic, but we have sort of these like hedgerows of the same stuff. So we have larger batches of things. But we still do grow our veggies and everything in between. And we do breeding. So my husband, like you mentioned before, is a breeder. And so we play with genetics. So basically when you start a seed, it could be male or female, right? For people who don't know, cannabis has male plants and female plants. And so the female plants are what makes the buds. It's what everybody's smoking. The male plant you don't ever see any part of the male plant anywhere in the marketplace, because all it has is pollen, and that's not something that you can actually sell. It's totally like an underground, super duper delicate, special thing that people share amongst each other. You make your own pollen and harvest it, but you don't want the males anywhere near any of the females unless you're intentionally seeding, because they'll fuck your shit up. But it's very delicate. It's like literally like a tiny fine paintbrush, and you're like in there and you're tagging that one cola, and you're like, this was crossed with this, and really detailed, and journaling about like what you've actually done here. And then, you want to keep that very safe. Like you can never do pollinating in the wind because you'll just like ruin the whole crop. So you want to go out there and it's like perfectly still, and you take a paintbrush and you're just like, do, 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 do. So it's a very like intimate thing. Yeah. So that's kind of like my husband's specialty. He just got genetics from neighbors and friends, and people just give you plants and give you seeds. And most of the time you don't know what the hell it is. And we literally have one of our main genetics that we started with forever ago was called Mystery OG, because we didn't know what it was, but it seemed kind of gassy. So we're like, okay, it's some kind of OG. So we just work with that mystery OG, and it's in a lot of our genetics these days. So, that's kind of how the culture is up here. Somebody's like, hey bro, I got these extra plants. I'm not going to plant them. Do you want them? And so you just mess around and you start breeding, and you find unicorns sometimes, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. A lot of that is same. It's like, I don't know what these are. Somebody gave them, or my cousin came by and dropped like 6 of these, and I took 2 and somebody else took 2, and I don't know which one's what. They don't have tags. But sometimes, I do indoor. So I had 2 tents, and at one point I was very religious about, I want to take anybody's shit, because at one point I was doing that and I was getting pesticides and all types of different like fly gnats. And I was like, I've never had these with my gorillas. And it's probably because I stuck to the same strain. So I knew that strain. And then when I brought in like fruities and citrusy ones, I was like, this is changing the whole dynamic of what's going on here. And it's like, that was a shit to grow. Someone's like, I would wear some surgeon shoes, ma'am, or take off your shoes when you're in there. And I was like, oh, really? Like, really? And it was like, I think in my mother's room. So I didn't like really think about it. It was really spacey in there. So I was like, right, I should, never even thought about it. So little things like that. But I loved it. Right now I'm not growing because it's about to get like 90s to 100 out here, and I would do it in the garage. Yeah, it was a constant, like I didn't ever need to even close my tent, which was probably worse because I also have a St. Bernard. That dander and hair was flying everywhere. So there was so many different things that I learned that I'm like, I couldn't imagine a farm. Like this is a 10 by 10 or like my 6 by 9 like room. Like you said, you wake up some days and you're like, oh, I guess you guys need attention today. So you're gonna, and that like expectation of like taking care of, for me, I've experienced like a little bit over 30 plus, that if one thing is fucked up or one plant's wrong, and then you have to clean that one out, and then you're like, okay, what was my original fucking task? And now we're looking at like, I've been out here for like 2 hours. Sometimes my husband will be like, where have you been? And I'm like, oh, I'm in the tent.
And under the canopy. That's our tagline for Moms Do Weed. Conversations from under the canopy, because often like we're like, hey Patty, what are you doing? I'm inside of a plant.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. But I have to say, Casey, like it's so funny listening to you talk about your experience as a cultivator, because that's where I started, and it was so unsatisfactory to try to grow a little 10 by 10 in your house with your mother's closet. Like, I gotta tell you, if you have the opportunity at any point in your life to grow just 2 or 3 plants outdoors, just do it. Even if they're little, even if you do just autoflower, just do that.
Oh, those autoflowers trip me out.
So gratifying. It's so gratifying to work with a plant that's interacting with nature instead of trying to recreate and fight nature in a little room.
Yeah.
It's such a different experience.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try it. See, I feel like this is fine.
Yep.
All right. We're going
to try it. And if you just plant late, if you just plant a clone late or plant a seed late in the season, it just won't get that big. Autoflowers, they like, maybe 4 feet is the biggest autoflower I think I've ever seen ever.
Yeah.
They're tiny little plants. They just don't have the propensity. They don't have the growth cycle to get that big,
I would say you guys probably have a different dynamic. My husband was like, that's all you do your thing, no problem. But with your backgrounds, I was intrigued to know, okay, how did you guys meet? Were you guys just like 2 stoner teenagers and like, everybody like, we're going to like hook up? Or was it like a rare story where like, oh no, my parents do it like this and my parents come from this farm? Like for you, CHIAHS, being that you guys were just saying your story, I was like, that's interesting. And I'm sure he has his way of doing things and his way of growing versus you, of how you grew up with your family. And
we differ in like certain areas, but like these days growing weed isn't even like, I barely even get to touch the plants, unfortunately, a lot of times, because I'm doing licensing and paperwork and sales and invoices, and I'm running around. Like I'm doing the packaging. I'm doing a lot of the, I do the labeling for our brand. Like I'm doing the marketing, doing everything. So like getting out in the garden is like a savior for me. And it's really hard to like keep a routine where you're like, go out there, do a little work, then like come back in, and when it's hot, like do all the other stuff. There's a lot going on. And so often we're just like not connecting about the plants. We're like, oh, you need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. And then like we're having arguments over that kind of stuff, right? It's like, if we could just work on the plants, we'd be happier. But
yeah, marriage is always work. I think marriage is not something, it's not like popular right now in today's world. And I still see it as something sacred, and it was something that back in the day I would like, don't know if I'm gonna get married. But as I got older, I was like, no, I really appreciate that commitment. And luckily I found a husband that allows me to do what I do, being one, this podcast, being a woman that uses my voice to advocate for the plan and kind of be the black sheep and not give a fuck that his wife is like standing, on her own with it. I think it's a privilege, and I am happy that you guys are working with your husband and they support you guys doing what you guys do as women. But I know it's not all like rainbows and sparkling, and it's more work, and it's like a choice. It's a choice to put in that effort. We've only been married for we're going on our 4th year, but been together for over a decade. So it's like, and now that, the kids are involved and all the different dynamics of life happen, it's always a choice. I think happiness is a choice, everything we do is like, we really got to put an effort and see where it like puts that marker of happiness life in us. But yeah, I love to see that you guys are a team and it's a family owned business. Arcanna Flowers has been around since 2015, and that is the whole bread and butter that you guys as a family work on together, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had that brand for since 2015, and it's we sell bulk, of course, and we do that kind of stuff too, but we breed specifically for the brand because what we're finding out there is like people are intrigued and have really good results and are really connecting with unique cultivars that we are cultivating, and so like we bring something to the table that you don't really see out there, and we do get sort of like what I call generic genetics, but like that there's a lot of that's oversaturation. And one thing that we're trying to do is preserve our culture and our community, and like that right there is about unique cultivars and keeping like legacy strains alive, because if we're not doing it, nobody's doing it. So we're trying to always like do something unique and have it like you don't really hear about our I'm smoking the lemon fire OG right now. This is something that my husband created like maybe like 9 years ago, and we keep it going with clones, but we also make seeds of different crosses of it, and those things are something that you'll never find out there, so we want people to be able to connect with something special. And you find that like the terpene profiles are very different than stuff that you see just we have stuff that comes up really high in certain terpenes that are super rare. And so like we want to keep those going because that's something special that, other people can enjoy and get benefits from, right? So we're always trying to like do something different than other people.
Yeah, I would say being a judge on the Emerald Cup for the 2nd time now for pre-rolls, I get an opportunity to learn about the terpene profiles. And it's true. It's interesting to see the immense amount of just the same exact almost terpene profiles across the board. And you're seeing a very rare amount of, certain profiles out there, but desserts are like almost everything. And I'm not.
I love that you call it desserts. It's like you're talking about like the wedding cake, the like, right?
Ice cream cake.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The vanilla frosting.
I am a gassy, like really stinky, cheesy, like old school vanilla. I'm not a big floral, like citrusy. Sometimes I gotta smell that Sharpie smell in it. And it's that gas that I would like to see more of. I think, ossamine is something that I didn't see very much of. And that was really tasty in some of the things that I tasted. Mm-hmm. I will say also becoming a judge and just being familiarized with, sun-grown cannabis, like growing in SoCal, I used to harp like indoor all day. Right. Now that I've been exposed to some sun-grown products, I am like, even my husband, I'm like, taste it, like suck on your tongue. Like there is substantial flavor. Yeah. I don't always get out here from some of the indoor things. And even of the many years that I have been smoking, not hitting hitting the same. And it's so interesting how trendy things can push the market when they're not aware of things like that. And I like I wouldn't know that, not being exposed to one, putting myself around people like yourselves and going to events where I am like thriving to educate myself more, even though I've been around it and have been growing for a decade now. There's so much to learn. Like when we're talking about terpene profiles and understanding like how
I think
that all
we barely
blends.
cracked the nut on that one. Like, it's kind of like I always like relate it to the ocean. I think we know about 4% of what's in the ocean. It's kind of like that with cannabis. Like,
Right.
there's all these terpenes and things that we don't even know how to test for, or like, there's monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes. Like there's so many different other things going on with the plants, not all about those like top few that you see all the time. Like, we have a strain this last year we named the scenic root because you get so hot. Patty's probably smoking it right now. I don't know. She was smoking. You were smoking it yesterday, or you did smoke it today? Well, it's a little too strong for me because it like takes you on a journey, and then you keep going and going. Your high keeps changing, and so it's a little bit unpredictable for me. It's super strong, but that one right there. Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay.
But that one, like, it has a terpene. The top terpene is like rosmarin, which is like what rosemary has as its top terpene. And like it's something that it kind of like tastes like, herbal forest flora. It's got all this stuff in it. It has guaiolol. I'm probably not saying that one right. There's another top terpene in it that's like only found in cedar.
Yeah, because to my understanding, we're only touching the 9 primary terpenes when there's, I want to say, over 100.
Like a few hundred, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, in the cannabis.
Is this the one, Chiah, that we were smoking with Dion? And I was sniffing it, and I was like, "Oh, I smell like eucalyptus, or is this sage?" I can't remember. Is this the same one that we were?
I don't think that's the one that we smoked, but it definitely has a lot of different things going on in it. That it's like something you're never going to find something like that out there. It's very specific based on also where it was grown. So a lot of people don't even know that like it's not just about the plant. It's about its exposure. It's about the soil, the sun hours, the wind, all the weather that's in that certain region, and
all the other plants that are around it, and how it's interacting with that in terms of just the kind of pollinators that you'll get. Like just the insect population and how they come and land on your plants and engage and like biology is just so incredibly complex. Where you and I are hardly even people. The three of us, we're mostly just hosts for a wide variety of other things that are nothing to do with us whatsoever, but they influence us. Like your gut biology influences your tastes, like what flavors, what things you seek out, and that influences your brain, and your brain influences all of it. And all of those neurological impulses are not even really anything to do with who you are as a person in terms of a spark. It's you're being influenced by the biology that you're carrying around on your skin. All of it is influencing what your choices are to a large extent. People become more conscious and aware of that. We're just plants. So, what you put in your body really, really matters. What you put in your body energetically really, really matters. You want to grow, you want to smoke something or consume something that's been handled by a person with love and tenderness as much as you can, because it's affected every single part of it and on a molecular level. Your thoughts are quite literally energy. They escape through your skull and radiate into the world. And that how you engage in your garden, in your space, in your home, in your community, all of that stuff is just a ripple, So when you're consuming cannabis, you want to ask yourself, This is a medicine. This is a heady medicine. This is at high levels, this is psychedelic, you know, this affects your neurology. So you want to smoke something that's been cultivated very consciously with a lot of thought and consideration,
Right.
and
You've seen
preferably
that
by
sign at the
you.
gate of my garden, right, Patty? It says,
Yeah.
we always like thank the plants and talk to the plants, and we don't have arguments in the garden. If we are going to be a negative Nelly, get out. And we don't play misogynistic music in the garden. We try not to listen to the news in there. So we try to make that area like those plants are soaking up our vibes and our energy and like what's going on in their environment. So on all ways. So like we try to make sure that product that ends up in your in your bong or whatever is like, you can sort of like inhale the essence of my little farm over here in Mendo.
Yeah. No, so well
Or
beautiful.
my little farm. Yeah, all of our little farms, or your little farm.
Soon,
Like
my
you
one
should be
baby.
growing at least one plant. It might not be enough to support your needs throughout the whole year. So you'll, still be buying weed, hopefully, from, a small legacy farmer, a small farm like ours.
I agree. I wanted to ask because while you guys were saying all this, it dawned on me. Do somebody that is like for retail stores, do you find it difficult, or are you having a hard time getting your type of products in the retail stores down here because they're not familiar with what you guys bring to the table as far as not being like a trendy brand or a brand that's just like, I don't know, I hate to say it, but like a corporate brand?
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, Patty could speak to it even more on a micro level than I could because her brand is a little bit newer and, but it like being a pre-prop, like I was in the Prop 215 era with our brand. And there was a certain level of like just kind of open acceptance almost because there was like not a ton of weed and it took a lot of effort to try to get sort of like to be able to cultivate medically and like and all that. And so I don't know, like it was easier in a way, but you were just selling bulk. And then we started having this little brand that like, we had all these relationships, but then once Prop 64 passed, all of those almost like went away because they couldn't get licensed or they didn't keep going. And so, it's been a challenge in different ways, but our brand this year, like so far already is like triple what we've done last year. And it's only because I am like out there and I have to be like putting my weed in the faces of the just, sorry.
I mean, it's kind of funny because like we were asking about the mentoring aspect of things. Like, do we have a mentor? And for me, like Chiah has been, as a businesswoman, watching her operate and watching like the way that she has gone about building the brand has been just really such a gift, because it's not anything that I don't have any training in that regard, and Chiah doesn't either. But she's just fucking out there working hard to say, like, here I am, here we are, and it's really super inspiring. I'm really lucky to have her as a friend. I've learned so much from, just being in her airspace.
How long have you guys how long have you guys known each other?
Only like a year and a half, actually.
Well, we go back further than that because
that's true, but I don't really remember. I guess when I guess we
it was a bigger part of my world. Yeah, I think it was more impactful for me because I was like experiencing, and so was she, with this same entity. We were both experiencing something really hard with them at the same time. So Chiah and I were moving around in the industry kind of in a parallel fashion without really knowing each other, but only having met each other because she was forced at some point in time to take a job at one of these with
A
one of these
company that shall not be
companies. I
named.
know the
Yeah.
horror. The company has to not be named exactly. And
They're
so
not even that bad, but it's just like the problem that is happening is like I was working for a distro and purchasing weed from small farmers and trying to resell it, right? As a distro and put it in different brands and things like that. And it's like suddenly I'm the bad guy that can't pay a farm, and it's my, I'm like representing that, and I don't want to be anywhere near that anymore. And so anyways, that's how we met. I was trying to sell Patty's weed, but but really our little anniversary is like the Emerald Cup of 2 years ago. And we got our booths placed next to each other, and we just like immediately rolled into like this banter and having lots of fun and talking about really like also super intimate, in-depth things that like we're like we should hang out. So we rarely ever actually get to be in each other's presence,
I was gonna
unfortunately.
say,
But
how far are you guys from each other?
like 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Okay.
no, it's like an hour and 20 minutes.
Well,
It's not that long.
okay.
Except, I mean, okay, wait.
That day.
If you meet me in town, it's an hour and 20 minutes. If I have to
Yeah,
drive
it's
to
like
your
a half an hour
farm,
for me to get down there. So, we're far away from each other, but like, we started doing Moms Do Weed, last year, and, we've just been having fun because we just,
April.
yeah. When's our anniversary, Patty? April.
I want to say no. Oh, well, we have 2 anniversaries because you, well, because we did our first panel, and that was on March 30th, and
Yeah,
then yeah, and that was like something I kind of like came to you and a few other women and was like, let's just tell everybody who we are, like let's just have a women's cultivator panel. Come on, this will be, like we've talked about anything. Here's some questions. And then I felt like really overwhelmed all of a sudden, like as the date approached, I was like, what did I just do? You know, like, and I was advertising for it really hard. Yeah, and all of a sudden I felt like, and Chiah just kind of came in from up under and like wrote me one afternoon and was like, okay, listen, how are you organizing this? What are you doing? Like in terms of this, and have you considered this? And let's put together a list of like, what did we do? We did like a document or something like that to like really direct people to understand, like we were trying to rev up to get and educate the general public about the struggle of what's happening in our area. This is like potentially like extinction level loss in terms of cannabis cultivars, in terms of the biological diversity, which is something that
and
is
the culture, just the
and the
people.
culture, just the people. The people are leaping. We've got people moving to Thailand. We've got people moving to Oklahoma. People are just like, it's like an exodus, and it becomes like a brain drain. Which there are other small communities on the planet that are not necessarily like cannabis related, but they're craft related, in a situation where you have a small area, small geographical area, where a rich and long history of a specific type of craft has gone on. And it's like cheese making, or, like in Afghanistan, there are certain kinds of art that are only done by a small village of people. It's a small group of people. And then once that's gone, it's like, poof, it's gone, And so working with the plant at the level that Jamie and Chiah are working on it, at the level that a lot of other long historical families are working with this plant, you have this situation where it's like, okay, if they quit, we just lost something like really tremendous as far as this craft is concerned. You can't regain that 40 years of knowledge until another 40 years from now. And if with that 40 years of knowledge, a whole genetic legacy gets lost, it's like the loss is even more tragic, and it's going to ripple, because you're talking about like, oh, all you get is desserts when you go into the dispensaries. I didn't even realize that there were like these other terpene profiles. Well, this is a medicinal plant. Those terpenes are going to heal something that another set of terpenes might not necessarily heal. And so if you have a situation like where, oh, okay, well, why is cannabis effective for Parkinson's? Well, why is cannabis also effective for treating dementia and Alzheimer's and depression and anxiety? And, even it's
now.
been
Yeah.
it's been prescribed as an asthma treatment. People don't realize that it's actually a bronchial dilator. Well, not every single cultivar is going to be a bronchial dilator. There's going to be just some that are.
That makes
It that is probably one of the reasons that you're finding yourself attracted to these certain terpene profiles, because you're seeking it out to benefit your fitness. That's going to be a whole separate thing versus someone who's medicating for pain,
yep.
right? And so if you lose that diversity, you just lose so much. And so, Chiah and I sat down. We were like, okay, we are going to tell this, and we're going to try to find a way to do it. So we just started working together, and then after
The voices
the
of
women's
women only,
meeting,
though, we have to say.
voices through the women only. That's right.
Mothers.
Yeah, and
Married
mothers.
women, mothers. I think you guys, we have a lot on our table to balance. We have definitely all types of different little buckets that I think can easily be diminished at any time. And I think, as sounds like you guys are two very spiritual beings that are very in tuned with your intuition, and you guys really seek that for yourselves and your family. So I imagine that takes a lot of work. Like I think I asked Chiah, your morning non-negotiable was coffee and herb. But Patty, for your morning routine, I know you said your morning routine can be a little bit, different depending on what your day looks like with the plants, but your one non-negotiable that you listed was sleep. And I think sleep is people take it two ways. Some people think that I think you need to be aware of when your body needs rest. And with you ladies constantly out on the field is one part. But as a woman, I feel like there's a lot of different aspects that can be draining to us that are not physical. And so sleep, you putting sleep was nice to see, because I just recently was listening to, I don't know if you guys know Jay Shetty, but he has a podcast as well. And it's, he interviews all types of different people, but someone on there was just saying it's a sense of a discipline as well, like being very aware of your being needing that rest and that time to rejuvenate. Because at the end of the day, if you're half-assing that, then you're going to be a half-ass person to everybody. So tell me more, like, what's a non-negotiable for you? Do you meditate? Do you have, it sounds like you have a fitness and personal training background. Does that still play for you now?
Yeah, it plays a lot into like just how I think about everything, really. I think, I'm constantly thinking on a regenerative level, of like, because as a trainer, my specialty was working with people who were post rehabilitative. They had just gotten out of physical therapy and they hadn't been integrated yet back into their body. And so as a result, they're experiencing still a tremendous amount of pain, oftentimes not in the area that where they were actually injured. So, someone who's like, oh, I just had a knee surgery. I got through a year of physical therapy for that, but they only addressed my knee and they didn't integrate anything else. So now my left hip hurts, or my other knee hurts, or my neck hurts, or, the body just gets thrown out of alignment. And I try as much as I can to, within, human reason to apply that, just in general, like, to my soil, to my cultivating, to, time spent with my children, to, me and my daughter, we have a joke where we say, are you resting properly? Because there's so much pressure to do that we feel guilty for resting. We feel guilty for like taking that time off. And then it's like, okay, well, if you're resting, then you should be doing something productive for yourself. Like you should be learning to play guitar. You should be learning to, do something, right? It's like even resting, you can't quite do it right. It's like there's just
Yeah,
so
the
much
modern
pressure.
world tells us we have to like do all these things and go, go, go. But like, right? Like, I don't know about you, Patty, but for me, the winter is like the time I get like really deep rest, because I don't know, just farming life kind of goes in that cycle. I don't know. Do you experience
Mm-hmm.
that too? I think?
Mm-hmm. I think I rest more in the summertime because I'm outside more and I get tired. I
Yeah.
notice that I'm actually harder on myself in terms of my self-care routines a little bit more in the winter because I don't get that physical hard work that really makes me um, able to rest because
You're just like,
I get very
exhausted at the end of the day, and you're
yeah,
just
I'm just
boom.
I get yeah, when I've been inside all day and I've just been sitting at the computer, which is what I oftentimes do in the winter, it's a time to like catch up on all the licensing. A lot of my licensing happens to expire and need renewal right at the beginning of spring. So our license, for whatever weird reason, it expires March 22nd. So usually in the winter, I'm spending a lot of time gathering documents and paperwork and getting all the things together, matching up my site plan to make sure it actually matches with what's going to be happening on the ground this year because it changes. You know, you have to be able to adapt. So you've got to like do science amendments. And there's a lot that goes into Prop 64 operating that people just have no idea that this is what we go through as operators, that you know if it's represented on the ground, it has to be represented in a actually to scale plan that's submitted not only to the state but to the county, and that has to match up. And they come and they do their inspections and they look and they're like, you know, if you get a real stickler for an inspector, they can actually walk out there with a tape measure and say like, oh, you've got 500, you know, you don't have
Yeah.
500 feet of line going down from the well to this. You've got, you know, 460. Yeah, talk about stress. Yeah, it's it's incredible. You know, Chiah just had to sit there and like on the fly build like a landing out for a building that was, you know, she was trying to get permitted, that really was affecting her ability to have her permit, her county permit, that which is going to make her state permit stay active, because the two interplay. If you don't have your local permit, you can't have a state license.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
cultivating in
all
this
it's crazy.
era is like, it's so stressful. And that's the thing, is like, it's really hard to rest when your mind is just like, you know,
Mhm.
you have to smoke more.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, good
Yep.
thing you
You have
guys
to smoke
have
more.
good
Exactly.
medicine.
Exactly.
Definitely good
Yeah.
medicine. But no, yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, it's so intimidating to even know first like the paperwork. And I'm sure it's not like you guys are like, oh, it's my attorneys are handling that and just hand it off to somebody that's, you know, taking care of that. But I think what you guys are saying is being the people behind, like you, it sounds like you guys are literally from seed to sale. Like you guys have your hands in your product. You guys know what you're putting out. You guys, and I love that because, you know, for me, if you're going to build a brand, you should be wearing it. You should smell like it. You should have it on. You should know everything about it. Like there's no reason. And that's what you guys illustrate through, you know, everything that you guys have shared. Imagine what you guys experienced. Like you said, it was on the fly. It was probably on our call last week when you said, I have a random, like, you know, inspection coming. And I was like, fuck, like just like that. Like I feel like it's almost done intentionally sometimes, and then you get like just like an asshole cop. Sometimes there's asshole cops and there's
Just
probably
because
asshole
of the
meter
stigma
people.
still. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and
Totally.
it's like you would think, you know, that they would be more like, this is medicinal, let me help you out, be cool about it. Hopefully there are the cool people out there that's checking on you guys. But that's the thing that I think is important to me, is pinning myself around women like yourself. Like I thought it was really nice to see that you had listed Chiah as one of your mentors. Patty, you had also listed Tamara Thorne, but it's not always easy to find people in your tribe. You know, womanhood is sounds fun and sisterhood sounds fun, but everybody's different. Everybody comes from a different background. And, you know, for me, it was all at first like, oh, you smoke weed? Great. We're like besties. And then you're like, oh, we're like completely two different people. So you learn that yes, weed does bring people together, but you also realize that there's so many different type of lifestyle that people are living through cannabis. And so with you guys, I'm curious to know, there's not very like poppy events like there is down here where there's like little clicky groups. You guys, I feel like, are really like, you guys know each other's like backbone of your story, and you know the hardships that you guys are like, no, we're here for you, you're here for me, like if you need anything, let me know. Do you guys find, like, I know you guys have been here maybe a couple of times down in the SoCal, do you guys have a tip for women in the industry, whether they're new or they're embedded in it, or maybe they're on the corporate side of like an MSO and don't come from the roots? Because, you know, me being on LinkedIn, I see, and having a corporate background, my network is pretty diverse as far as who I talk to in the community. And I'm interested to know, coming and you, Chiah, being embedded in the roots, and then you also having, you know, your two farms, Patty, coming with your background in physical training and all of that. Where do you guys see like where women are going in community here? Like, do you guys have tips on a better way to finding your tribe? Because I don't feel like everybody, even though we all smoke weed, not everybody's going to be part of your tribe. Like, how do you
Right.
guys keep that flowing for you guys, especially now you guys work together on Moms Do Weed. So you guys have taken your relationship to a deeper level. And that's not always easy for me being an event host. Sometimes it's like, I wish I had extra hands, but how do I trust somebody seeing the same vision and not fucking up professionally what I've built up under my
Right.
name? I think that's something I'm learning too, like being a business entrepreneur, like you as a woman, like you really got to learn your worth and know what your boundaries are.
I think for me, like tip wise, I guess I kind of live under the motto of community over competition is like a phrase that I say all the time because where I'm from and how I was raised, you know, like it's about your community. You have nothing if you don't have people next to you and helping each other. Like the community built the house I was born in. My dad didn't hire a contractor. Like that's how we roll around here, right? And so that's the same in the cannabis community. I feel like Patty and I specifically with Moms Do Weed like complement each other really well. Like she has this totally different background than me with like mycology, and she comes at it from like this whole other like health level, you know, literally from like the ground up. And you know, I'm more like kind of like organized in a way that like I'm like always trying to control stuff, but in a way that like our podcast and the things that we do flow really well together because she's so good at like bridging the gaps and having these like really flowing conversations where there's like so much information, but also just like the love and the heart and the compassion comes through, right? And so, and I'm over here like making sure that we're on time and all that kind of stuff. Like, so we complement each other in that way. And like, we know that about each other. And like, I feel like it's really a benefit to us. And I think that for other women out there, it's not, you know, it's about like supporting each other. And just because like so-and-so has a brand, like Patty and I roll around to dispensaries, walk in together with our individual brands and say, hey, I'm helping her and she's helping me to get out there. I just did this with some other girlfriends. Like, this is how we go. We go to LA on a road trip with each other. We walk into dispensaries together. We do demos together because it's like, hey, we are small farmers. It's like a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's our thing. And we're friends. We love each other. And it's not about competition. Like sometimes the dispensary picks up one and not the other. That's unfortunate. That does happen. But like you have to try. And I've been doing this for a few years now where like I was relying on other people to do our sales and that didn't really work. And now that I'm doing it and putting my face in these places, that's really the only way. And it's because it's authentic and it's something different and people are just excited to like interface with you're the farmer, like you actually trimmed this bud, you actually like do these. Yeah, I do all of that, right? Yeah. And so our story is the way that like it connects people. And so I think that's what Patty and I have like a really strong bond around, connecting people and connecting with people. And that's like how we build our community. So.
And also I think it's been interesting because both Chiah and I, we work intimately with our husbands on our farms. And I think that, one thing that each of us kind of brings is like this sense of like, okay, if it's not to some degree, if it doesn't flow easy, it's okay to let it go, because Moms Do Weed is also not a money-making venture. This is an advocacy effort, and that does change things. It does make it so that we have a sense of ease about it that I think also comes through because it's like this is an education-based platform with the goal being to normalize what we have been through as women, as mothers, as citizens, to feel like we're doing something wrong, that was something that we're being judged for, and so to be able to stand side by side with all women, Moms Do Weed is like, it's Chiah and I, but our whole purpose is bringing in and elevating women's voices within the cannabis community. And, so standing tall and saying, like, we are successful, intelligent, spiritual, very intense women who are not your typical, like, stoner. I've never met a person like that, to be quite frank. Weed doesn't do that to people. It's not that kind of a compound. That is like, that's a stigma in and of itself, just the fact that, like, oh, I'm super
Lazy
forgetful.
stoner
Yeah,
stigma, yeah.
right. Lazy stoner, like, yeah, this excuse making kind of thing. I've not met a lot of people who in the cannabis community that fit that profile. That is just not something I have personally seen. Everybody that I've seen that I associate in this community across the board, some really hard fucking working people who are super creative and very good at pivoting, because that's what you
Yeah.
have to be. You have to be thinking on your feet. If you were working with the plant prior to Prop 215, you were really thinking on your feet constantly, like 100%, because you're literally evading the law. I didn't come into working really wholeheartedly with cannabis on a really personal level of, like, really trying to actively grow it until Prop 215. I was selling weed a little bit on the side in college. A lot of people were, I was trimming weed for somebody who was growing it, and who was literally getting, sometimes people would page him and they'd be like, hey, I'll meet you at your spot. And those people would have gotten some kind of a tip off, and they'd show up with some fucking 45s, and they would rob my friend, and he would be like, I just lost everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really terrifying. So for me, like, being a young woman, there was no way I was going to be putting myself into that situation in the middle of Oakland, like, no. But when Prop 215 passed and I had an opportunity to work with the plant, and it was like there was some kind of sense of, like, okay, I can choose what dispensaries I go to try to sell. And there are actual dispensaries, and Oaksterdam University was opened up, and there were some legit places. It was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm gonna definitely do this, even if it is federally still illegal, and I still have to, like, have weird signs up in the garden up to the sky that show everybody's medical rec and, like, the green cross and all that. Like, it was a little scary,
Yeah.
having all your paperwork ready by the door, so just in case they came in, you could, like, try to stop them from, like, destroying your house,
I can't
you know.
imagine. Obviously, probably, yeah, I was smoking, but I had it a bubbler in the
Like, obviously.
obviously, yeah. In, like, my cup holder, bubbler, but it had water. So I was like, damn it, like, I didn't want the water to spill. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to put it under my C. And by the time he got to my door, I was so damn nervous about everything that I gave him my debit card. Good thing he was chill about it. And he was like, honey, that's your debit card. And I was like, oh, I meant to give you my ID, sir. But I can't imagine scrounging to get, your shit in line and have everything, your ducks all aligned, your I's, dotted and your T's crossed. So, you guys definitely
In
live.
2010, we drove across the country, Ray and I have a funny story about that. We drove across the country, and we had a friend send us something in Georgia or North Carolina, where we were. And so we had some weed in North Carolina, and it's just a small amount that we were just smoking on, and we drove it all the way back to California. And we got to California, there was like a agriculture check, and they were stopping everybody and going through everybody's cars. And I ate like 2 ounces of weed. Like, I just crunched it up like chips. I just, like, ate it. and like swallowed it down with water. And Ray was just like, "What are you doing? How are we?" Because we couldn't throw anything out the window. It was just like so obvious, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I knew they would smell it, and I knew they would find it. Like they were unearthing people's cars.
Yeah.
So I just ate like 2 ounces of weed. I was stoned for like
Now that since it wasn't,
uh, ever. Not
decarved,
good.
does that still would that still fuck you up? Because it's like eating
You know,
THC, right? Like an extreme amount of
I think
THC.
I think it depends on like how much oil I might have had in my system or something, because I might have
Oh,
like
to
eaten,
the
or
fat,
like
but
it
it
just
sticks
it's
to
oil.
the.
Yeah, so I was high. They say you're not supposed to get high
Well,
from
two
eating weed.
ounces. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
I don't think.
high.
Yeah,
I was high as fuck. It was not fun, but
I would have done
we
the
did
same.
not get in
But yeah,
trouble.
and
I
cried.
would have drunk
I
that
would
bong
be
water. I'd have just been like gobble, 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 gobble.
times. I'll tell you that I've been smoking weed for a really long time. It's been part of my life, and it's funny because I hated it when I first tried it. It was out of a Coke can. I remember that, and
That'll do it. Ew.
yeah, and I could. It was swag for sure. Like I could still remember her. Yeah, it was not a good experience, but something changed. I don't remember. I probably got a good batch somewhere in between 17 right out of high school, and it just changed my life since then. And I just, it was out of apples. And I remember working at a restaurant and everybody smoked, and they were doing them out of like making pipes out of potatoes and carrots. And it was like, it was a really good time for me. And then it wasn't until I became a mom that I realized like how it helps me medicinally, um not just for my body but just like mentally. Like I'm just a lot more patient. I'm fun with them. I can sing all of their Frozen songs all day with them, and me and my husband consume. So we're canna parents and we're very responsible about it, but we don't we really want them to be aware of what it is. So my daughter, she's aware of how to smell flowers, and it's the same thing of regular flowers. Like when we're outside, she knows now, like she just puts her nose to it, and she's only 2. It's not something we hide. Our neighbors have been really like adapted to it. They saw my tent, and that's how it started most of the conversations. They're like, "So are you growing tomatoes?" And it's always a joke like that around here. And it's like, no, cannabis. And now like it's taken me some time to, like, I feel like cannabis is like the okay word where people are like, "Oh, cannabis." But if I was like, "Oh no, I'm growing some weed," they're like, "What?" So I've learned to like kind of use the lingo with
Right.
different people. Even like friends that don't smoke, but maybe they're dating someone that smokes. They're like, "Hey, Casey, like, what should I get? He likes blunts and he likes this. Like, do you have a suggestion?" It's baffling to me that I'm like, I know this much because I'm in it and I'm like eager to learn, but not everybody is aware. And when they go into dispensaries, the bud tenders do not, one, they don't have the same education either. And it's sad to see because I worked for somebody for a short period of time as a salesperson, and being able to go in and drop off or even try to get to know who the buyers were of the retail stores, like that that itself is already difficult. And then you get in there and you see the vibe and you're just hearing like what the bud tenders are talking about, and it was a eye opening to see like, wow, now I understand when they say it's really hard to get my product on the shelf. I can't imagine like what you guys go through for that. Especially when you're saying you're trekking all the way from NorCal to be in front. That I would say that's really showing like how much effort you guys are putting.
Too. I mean, the hard thing, I think you asked this earlier, is like about where we are down south and in just dispensaries, delivery services, and that's like the hardest thing for us. Like there's a million dispensaries in LA and the greater area, right? It's like, where do you even start? And working with somebody who has an affinity towards sun grown in that area is more difficult than it is north, right? And so I just had an experience this last week in Sacramento where we just cold walked into a dispensary, 3 sun-grown female farmers just cold called a dispensary, walked in, and there's 0 sun-grown in there. There was like probably like 80 plus flower SKUs and not one sun-grown flower. And then we just started talking to them and talking to the buyer, and he was like super friendly and was blown away by the terpene profiles and just like the look of the flower. And like that sold it right there. And he's like, okay, we're making an order. And that's never happened to me. And I thought, okay, like walking into a dispensary with two other farmers is like, it's kind of harder to get an order for even yourself, let alone all three of you. And it was like, oh my God, it's like a dream come true that somebody has an open mind that obviously is not purchasing in that way already, to just change your mind like on a dime because of what they saw, like how we brought it, you know, everything that we do for ourselves, and just like a really, we know about each cultivar, like we can speak to that exact plant or that exact, you know, like how that was grown and everything. It's mind blowing to people. And I think, it really starts there with the education. It's not just about like growing good weed. It's also about, it's like your story really behind it, I think helps a lot. And so we have to put our face there, and going to do events like where the three of us met is really vital to what we're doing. We have to just, creating a vibe. I think, like you said, it's bringing the people to the weed, and also like bringing the weed to the people, and making an event that's fun and engaging and that kind of thing, like is really where it's at. But it's hard for us to get away, especially this time of year, like here we go into planting and all that. Like how do we incorporate all the things? Because Patty's actually the primary cultivator at their farm. Like she's doing the boots on the ground way more than I am, and she's doing the licensing and stuff too. So like, to get away even for an hour from the farm is hard enough. Right, Patty? You're like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, it's like our whole, world on our farm kind of got turned upside down by my husband injuring his neck. So he has a degenerated disc between his C5, C6. So he experiences like intense, like periods where like his whole leg will go numb. And, it's interesting because like Chiah had the exact same kind of experience. She had a spinal injury she was unaware of. And all of a sudden one day she's like, I can't walk. I cannot. I cannot do this. Yeah. So, a big part of the reason that she has not boots on the ground is because her body like literally cannot handle it. And then, it's like on our side, it's like my husband's body just can't do it anymore. And so, we were working more side by side. We were both engaged very much. And Ray still does a lot of stuff, but it has to be like very controlled, so, he's our soil guy. He definitely can come and like look around and say like, oh, okay, this is lacking. And, we need to add some, we need to make massive biochar. We need to add biochar. He'll come in and say, oh, we need to mulch with this. And it's been kind of interesting for me trying to do a lot of this, like more on a personal level, and kind of bringing in like learning how to make my own liquid fertilizers and things like that. We typically don't really fertilize, we work with soil that we've generated here on the farm. And it's kind of interesting being like, okay, what am I going to do with all these weeds? Like, can I utilize this for anything, and then like realizing like, oh man, I could like make silica out of this, or I could do this out of this, and, kind of learning that and adding another layer. It's been really like really fascinating, transforming from being a city girl who literally had never grown anything at all, into my 30s. I was a city dweller. I did not have, I could kill a house plant very, very effectively, in a very short period of time.
Or like, I gave you a succulent and now it died. I'm like, it was a succulent. How did it die?
Yeah. And no, quite literally, the first thing that Ray ever gave me was a mushroom kit. And
I want to get into that.
I asked him what he did. So I immediately turned it into mold. I effectively grew a fungus.
I was
It
going to
just
say,
wasn't
well,
the
I
Like,
did just
desired.
recently learn mold is some sort of like penicillin. I'm
So
all people use
that's
that
right.
back
That's what
in
I
the
grew. I grew trick.
day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah, yeah.
documentary. I've been diving into that, and it's interesting to see so many people in our industry really start diving into mushrooms and the positive benefits that they have, the properties. And I'm sure it's been around, from what I'm understanding, it's been around for decades, and there's been enough R&D around it, which is why a lot of people are open to it. But I think we're just tapping into it now from different people that I'm talking to, but like it's becoming trendy as far as like mud water, putting it in their things and different like
Oh yeah.
stream type of things, but not like I imagine these are therapeutic type of mushrooms. I recently just, back in the day, I've taken mushrooms that it was just like, here you go, here's an eighth. I bought an eighth and I knew what was going to happen type of idea. I've had bad trip. I've had a good trip. But as an adult, I was now being exposed to somebody who was growing it. They were aware of the strains and which one did what. And I was like blown away that, well, one, the way they grow is just like that, like just like that, just like you can put it, give it its like, the air, the environment to create that can
Mm-hmm.
be done so quickly. And then I saw documentaries coming out. I geek out on a lot of things like that. So when I read your brand story and I started to see mushroom mastros, is that right?
Maestros. Yeah.
Maestros and
Mushroom maestros.
so is
Like the
that
maestros that do, like
yes, yes.
they're yes, yes, yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. So this is also a farm. You guys also have a mushroom farm. Is that correct?
Not anymore. No.
Not
So we
anymore.
started
Okay.
out together. Yeah. So I mean, we do, but we do not cultivate oyster mushrooms or other edible gourmet varieties for the purpose of bringing them to market like we did. So when we were living in Oakland, it was far easier because we were living on a city lot out of a RV. So it was my husband, my little girl, and I. I gave up my apartment to chase this dream of moving here to this farm. So Ray and I met, and he was just like, are you happy with this life? Like, I was working, even though I loved my job, I loved my career as a trainer, I was a single mom. And I was struggling to work enough to pay the bills. That's why I was working, I would work from 6 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. My little girl was like off in daycare, and I was living like this very challenging life of like, I was literally just working to pay the rent and to pay her daycare. And then whatever was left after that, was what we had. And it was a struggle, and so I met Ray, and we just vibed on a lot of stuff, like I never wanted to be a mom who worked. Like I always wanted to be that mom who was just like home with their children, engaging 100%, and living kind of a more like, I work at home, the children are at home, family is at home, we live in a village. Really, a, like how Chiah grew up is like my vision of like, this is heaven. This is utopia. This is what will create a thriving community, a thriving world, right? And I grew up in a very different setting. I grew up in urban East Oakland, in very much affected by the war on drugs in a very different sort of way than Chiah was. But we have some of the same trauma of helicopters and being afraid of police, and being exposed to extremely challenge what most people would call challenging levels of poverty. Chiah didn't have electricity. We also a lot of times did not have clean water or electricity, but we were not living in the middle of the forest and living a beautiful life. Like we were surrounded by urban decay, right? And urban challenges that other kinds of hard drugs were presenting for having a wholesome and idyllic childhood was not something that was going on. So, for me as a mother, protecting my child from that and being like, I will work as hard as I need to work to raise my child in as wholesome of an environment as I can, but never having had that natural life to say, like, I'm going to go and actually seek out to live on a farm. I had dreamt of it as a child, even. Me and my best friend, when we were 10 years old, my best friend Tammy, were like, okay, when we grow up, we're going to get a farm, we're going to have a cow, we're going to have chickens and goats, we're going to raise all our own food, and we're never going to leave. Right. And that was like literally a dream that I like cooked up with my best friend when I was 10. It was like the craziest thing. And so to have a life partner, a boyfriend, come to me and be like, hey, you want to go live out on the farm? We want to go. And, like that reel is like really kind of how Ray approached me. Yeah. Like he really did come up and just like, you want to go start a mushroom farm and a cannabis farm with me? I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And so I literally listed my apartment on Craigslist and said, everything in my apartment is free. 100% of everything in my apartment is free with the exception of my personal items and my daughter's toys and our clothes. I gave everything away. Somebody drove up in a U-Haul, picked it all up, and drove away with it. And I was like, bye-bye, life. We invested in a trailer. We moved on to a city lot that Ray already owned. He had bought it like 6 months earlier. There was no house on it. It was in the middle of on 26th and San Pablo in West, between MLK and San Pablo in West Oakland. Just for anybody listening to this who knows that area, it's going to be like, what? So we lived there, and we lived there in a camper. We dry camped on a city lot during the Occupy movement in 2010 and 2011. And on the weekends or whenever we had time, we would load up the trailer or a smaller trailer onto the back of the truck, and we would come up here and we would camp at Boggs Mountain. And we were actively looking for a 5-acre homestead. And so when we were doing that, we were also farming mushrooms on that city lot in Oakland, and we were selling mushrooms to the local restaurants, and we were teaching mushroom growing classes out of that city lot, and we were teaching mushroom growing classes with the urban living or the urban, oh god, I can never remember the name of her school. She was the Ghost Town Farms author of that book. She started like an urban farm in the middle of West Oakland, and she's not operating anymore. Now she's moved up to Oregon, but we taught for her on her calendar, and then we taught at the Biofuel Oasis, and then there was another small store in Alameda where we would regularly teach mushroom growing classes to people for money. And we just sold, 10, 20, 30 pounds at a time to various different restaurants. And we bootlegged at the farmers markets. And that's how we earned the ability to come up here and start our Prop 215 farm and pay for all of our articles of incorporation and get all of our stuff filed and figure out, how we were going to move forward with what we were endeavoring to do, which was to never leave the mountain again. And so, yeah.
Now you're a slave to it. You can't leave.
No, I never get to leave.
You guys are one. Wow. You guys have some very inspiring stories. Both you and Chiah, you guys are very inspirational as women, as mothers. And it's just really interesting, to hear your guys' pains from yourselves who are actually living it. I've yet to really hear it from your end. We hear it in the cannabis industry. There's a lot of newsletters that get put out about everything that's going on. People talk about it in some of their posts, but actually hearing your stories as far as how you guys, actually are living through it, been through it, and are living through this part of it now. It's just like never ending, and it's a very tiresome industry, but you guys are still carrying a very bright spirit. And so it's only inspiring to people like me who I don't have to deal with that. For me, it's more recreational. It's as long as I'm able to get it. And I have the privilege of growing a couple plants here. But if it wasn't for people like yourself, I may not have this privilege. And so it's always something that I think we have to be aware of in the community is really, like you said, it's the culture. That's just me. It's always been part of my life. And as I got older, I've only been more proud to be in it. And then being around women like yourself has really given me the confidence to speak to others on it. So I appreciate everything that you guys do and sharing everything. I know this was a lot longer than I expected. So I appreciate, you guys both being moms and taking the time out of our crazy nights to do this. We probably have to do a part 2 to get more of your stories in and share more. But how, I guess Chiah first, since you shared your story, how can we support you? Is there somewhere we can follow you, and what websites are you currently pushing right now for Arcanna flowers?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, really ask for Arcanna flowers and wherever you go, to your delivery service or your dispensary near you, wherever you are in California, because that helps us. And just buying sun-grown cannabis from small farmers is super important, of course. You can find information about my farm and brand at arcannaflowers.com. It's ARCANNA flowers.com. And then on Instagram as well. And also I have CHIAHS Nature, which is another page that I do more of my, like, what I like to say, like, sort of inappropriate cannabis personality stuff.
I was wondering. Okay, great.
Yeah, because my husband isn't totally, like, he has a very specific vibe that he wants on our brand page. And so I take my other, like, flippant moms do weed stuff over there. And Patty and I have our moms do weed page as well, on Facebook and Instagram too. So all of the above will connect you to all of the above. So it's all good.
And we'll put it in our description as always. Patty, where can we support you, and where can we find where to see more about your company?
You can learn about us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, on Instagram as well. We're just Noble Gardens. .ca on Instagram. When you see like a rainbow kind of sun, moon, mandala type mountainscape, you'll know that's us. And so you can follow us there. We're working on our website. You can also ask for our brand at your local retailer and see if they've got us. I can almost guarantee you that they don't, but they should. And you can support Moms Do Weed. And you can also follow our mushroom growing page on Facebook. We host the world's largest Facebook group for mushroom growing, which is called Mushroom Growing, quite literally, on Facebook. And the only caveat is that we only discuss food on that particular channel, because we do not want to lose the group. It's a public group. A lot of people globally have really learned a lot about nourishing malnourished communities by farming mushrooms, by farming gourmet edible mushrooms. And just like you were saying earlier, they fruit so fast. So, a family can really produce food in less than a month. They can have really nourishing food for themselves. And we don't want to put that at risk by discussing psilocybin or active mushrooms on that page. So that is the one caveat that everybody should know. And you can follow us and support us there as well.
Yay. You guys are doing some kick-ass job. And to really say educating, you guys definitely are huge educators and are giving back. So again, I appreciate you guys for coming on. You guys, this is a wrap for us. This is another episode with two dope women in the cannabis industry who are doing many different things, educating and bringing back a lot to us women here in SoCal. We're excited to see you guys back.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in to Rich Soil Podcast.